The bloom you're admiring right now wasn't decided this week. It was decided 14 weeks ago, before you ever saw a bud, before you even suspected one was coming. And the number of petals it will have, already locked. You cannot feed it, water it, or coax a single additional petal onto that flower once that window closes. Today, I'm showing you the invisible 14-week process running inside every rose in your garden right now. The handful of quiet moments where what you do writes the outcome. Let's get into it. The 14-week timeline. That open rose looks fast. A bud swells, it opens, done in 2 weeks. And that last stretch really is quick. That part's true. But it's only the tail end of a much longer process that started long before you ever noticed a thing. Roughly 14 weeks before a bloom opens, deep inside a growing tip, the plant makes a decision that has nothing to do with leaves at all. At the tip of every growing shoot is a tiny zone of dividing cells. Botanists call it a meristem. Think of it as the plant's construction crew. Up to a certain moment, that crew has one job: build more stem, build more leaves. Pure vegetative growth. Then a signal arrives. We'll get to what it is shortly because it's fascinating on its own. And that construction crew does something dramatic. It switches jobs entirely. It stops making leaves and starts making a flower. That switch has a name: bud initiation, and it's the true birthday of the bloom. Not when you see the bud. Not when it opens. Right here, invisibly, weeks earlier, when the meristem flips from leaf mode to flower mode. Everything you eventually admire, the swelling bud, the color breaking, the petals unfurling, is just the slow, patient unfolding of a flower that, in miniature, already exists. So the gorgeous bloom you want in early summer is being decided in early to mid-spring. The cause and the effect are 3 months apart. In zone 5 to 6, that's April into May, warmer zones run a few weeks ahead, colder zones a few weeks behind, and southern hemisphere gardeners shift 6 months. Your window is September into October. Wherever you are, the rule is identical. The flower is decided long before it appears. The blueprint. Once the meristem switches over, what happens next is genuinely one of the most elegant things in all of botany. That tiny dome of identical cells begins something called differentiation. Identical cells starting to become different, specialized things in a precise, preset order, working from the outside inward. It builds the flower in rings, like an archer building a target from the outer edge toward the bullseye. The outermost ring, the sepals, the green protective casing you see wrapped around an unopened bud. Built first as the armor. Then, moving inward, the petals, the part you actually came for. Then, the stamens, the pollen-bearing parts. And finally, at the very center, the bullseye, the parts that would form seeds and hips. Sepals, petals, stamens, center, outside to inside, that exact sequence, every single time. Each part begins its life as a microscopic bump called a primordium, a tiny founder cluster of cells already assigned a job. You'll become a petal. You'll become a stamen. And here's the part that matters to you as the person holding the watering can. This entire blueprint is drawn while the bud is still smaller than a single grain of rice, completely invisible without a microscope. By the time you can see a green nub on the stem with your naked eye, the architecture is already finished. The plant is no longer deciding what the flower will be, it's just building out, at full size, a plant it completed weeks ago in miniature. Petal count, already decided. Those deep, full, cupped roses everyone falls in love with get that look from exactly one thing: a very high petal count. 60, 80, sometimes well over 100 petals packed into a single bloom. That density is the beauty. And that number is determined way back in those primordia rings we just talked about, before the bud is anywhere near visible. In that invisible microscopic window, the meristem produces a set number of petal primordia. It decides, essentially, this flower gets 70 petals. Once that phase closes, the count is fixed, locked, final. Let me say plainly what that means, because it overturns a lot of common garden wisdom. You cannot feed, prune, fertilize, or water a rose into more petals once that window has closed. By the time you can even see the bud forming on the stem, the plant already answered the question of how full that flower will be weeks earlier, at a scale you'll never witness with your own eyes. So, what actually decides it while it's still open? 2 things. First, Genetics. The variety you bought sets the ceiling, the maximum possible petal count that rose is capable of. A variety bred for 100 petals can hit 100. A simpler variety bred for 20 never will, no matter what you do. But, and this is the part you control, whether the plant actually reaches its genetic ceiling depends entirely on its condition during that initiation window. A well-fed, unstressed, energy-rich plant fills out its full potential and hits the ceiling. A stressed, depleted plant produces fewer petals and a flatter, thinner bloom, even on a variety genetically capable of 100. Same plant, same genes, dramatically different flower, decided by its health in a window you can't see. Genetics loads the gun. The plant's energy during that invisible window pulls the trigger. Why fall feeds spring? Here's the connection almost no gardener makes. And if you take just one practical thing from this whole video, make it this one. Building a flower costs energy, real physical energy. A plant's currency is sugar. Sugars it manufactures through photosynthesis, which botanists call photosynthate. Every petal, every stamen is built with sugar the plant had to earn and spend. Here's the timing problem. The earliest, most critical stages of bud initiation happen in early spring, before the plant has grown a full canopy of new leaves to fund the work. It has to start building next season's flowers before its solar panels are even fully deployed for the year. So where does that early energy come from? Like, it can't all come from spring. Spring hasn't paid out yet. The answer is reserves the plant banked the previous autumn. In fall, a healthy rose does something deliberate. It pulls its sugars down and out of its canes and moves them into the roots and crown, banking them safely through the whole winter. It's a savings account. The plant earns all summer, and in autumn, it makes a big deposit and locks it away. Then spring arrives, and before the new leaves can pay their own way, the plant makes a withdrawal from that account. A rose that went into winter with a full account initiates strong, full, high petal blooms because it has the energy to hit its genetic ceiling. One that went into winter thin, stressed, overpruned too late, still burning energy on soft growth instead of banking, initiates weaker, sparser blooms. Not because of anything that happened in spring, because the account was already empty when spring came calling. In zone 5 to 6, that reserve building runs September into October. Warmer zones bank later, colder zones earlier, and in the southern hemisphere, it's your autumn, roughly March into April. So when you feed and care for your roses in fall, reframe what you're doing. You're not feeding this year's blooms. Those are already spent and gone. You're funding next year's, making the deposit that spring will withdraw. Quick one. If the real biology behind organic rose care is what you're here for, go ahead and subscribe. Every video on this channel connects to the others. Back to it. The temperature trigger. So what actually flips that meristem switch? Mainly temperature working hand in hand with day length. As spring soil and air warm past a threshold and the days steadily lengthen, the plant reads that combination, warmth plus lengthening light, as a clear signal. It's time. And initiation begins. This is exactly why a random, mild week in February doesn't fool your roses. The trigger isn't one warm afternoon. It's a sustained pattern of warmth and lengthening days together. The plant reading the season as a whole. Not one nice day. It's far too smart to bet its entire reproductive future on one warm Tuesday. And temperature keeps its hand on the wheel after initiation, too. It sets the pace of development, how fast that invisible bud matures and finally opens. A cool spring stretches the timeline out. Blooms arrive later, but often larger and more richly colored, because slow development gives the plant more time to pack sugar and pigment into each flower. A hot spring does the opposite. It compresses everything. Blooms rush open faster, sometimes smaller and paler, because it all happened in a hurry with less time to build depth. That's why the same rose, in the same spot with the same care, can bloom a little differently year to year. It's not you doing something wrong. It's the weather conducting the orchestra. The energy budget and how to read it on your own plant. Here's the real explanation for why a stressed plant makes smaller, fewer, thinner blooms. It comes down to pure energy math, a budget. At any given moment, a rose has a finite budget of sugars, and it has to spend that single budget across everything it needs to do at once. Grow and maintain its roots, build and run its leaves, defend itself against pests and disease, and, last on the list, produce flowers. Really hear that phrase, last on the list. Because from the plant's cold biological point of view, flowers are a luxury. They are not a survival organ. Roots keep it alive. Leaves keep it fed. Defenses keep it from being eaten. Flowers are about the future, and a plant fighting to survive the present will not spend its last dollars on the future. So watch what happens when a plant is under stress. Drought, heat, a pest infestation, poor, thin soil. It reroutes its budget, hard, towards staying alive. It spends on roots and defense first, and whatever scraps are left over only then go to blooms. A stressed rose isn't deciding to punish you with ugly flowers. It simply cannot afford the good ones. Every symptom you see, fewer petals, a smaller final bloom, faster fading, is just the plant economizing, cutting the luxury budget to pay the survival bills. Which means if you reduce a plant's stress during that initiation window and during fall reserve building, you're not just keeping it healthy in some vague sense. You're directly funding fuller, larger, longer-lasting blooms. Health and beauty were never two separate goals. They're the exact same goal, seen at two different moments in time. And you can actually read this on your own plant right now in about a minute. Standing in your garden, no microscope required. Pick a lateral, a side stem branching off a main cane, and look along it for the nodes, the points where leaves attach. Every node is a potential site for a bloom-bearing shoot next season. Compare a lateral on a vigorous, well-fed cane against one on a thin, stressed, or heavily shaded cane. On the healthy cane, the nodes sit close together, plump, well-developed, strong, viable candidates to push out a flowering shoot next season. On the stressed cane, they're farther apart, flatter, less developed, fewer of them. That's not a metaphor. You're literally looking at next season's flowering potential, written right there into the wood, today, months before a single bloom ever forms, while you still have time to do something about it. Walk your roses and compare laterals across the whole plant. The canes with tight, plump, well-fed nodes are where your very best blooms are going to come from. How this changes your year. So let's step all the way back and look at the whole picture at once, because it genuinely rewrites how you think about growing roses. You do not grow blooms in the moment you see them. You grow them across the entire preceding year. Trace it backward. This spring's flowers were funded by reserves banked last fall and initiated in early spring, decided before you ever saw them. And this summer's care, right now, is building the reserves for next spring's flowers. There is no true off-season for a rose, only different stages of one single continuous year-round process. Winter isn't a pause. It's the plant living off its savings. Once you see it that way, something clicks about where your real power as a gardener lives. Because it means the highest leverage things you do are almost never the obvious, visible ones. They're the quiet ones. Banking full reserves in fall, reducing stress during that spring initiation window, keeping the plant's energy budget flush when there isn't a single flower on the plant to admire. The gardener who understands this hidden process stops chasing blooms in summer and starts building them in every other season, in all the invisible moments. You stop gardening the flower and start gardening the plant that makes it. 14 weeks, an invisible blueprint drawn smaller than a grain of rice. A petal count locked before you can see it. A bank account that spans all 4 seasons. That's how a rose actually builds a bloom. If this changed how you see your roses, hit like. It's the fastest way to get this in front of another gardener who wants to actually understand their plants. And subscribe if you want the rest of the system. Next time, if reserves are the whole story, the soil food web that fills that account is where it all begins. There are more living organisms in 1 teaspoon of your rose bed than there are people on this planet. I'll show you what they're doing for your blooms. Until next time, happy gardening.